Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. My name is Sheldon and today we're on the website of Gardiner Houlgate Auctioneers based in the UK. We're going to have a look at one of their latest auctions, which is fine stringed musical instruments from the collection of Peter Voigt and also a few other things that they've kind of chucked in. So this is happening on Friday the 28th of March. Now, there's been loads of other Gardiner Houlgate auctions recently, a general musical instrument one and loads of guitar auctions, but because of time I wasn't able to cover them, unfortunately. But this one should be fairly interesting. Peter Voigt was from quite a very long family of violin makers from Germany originally, and quite a few of them were kind of living and born in the UK as well. So this should be a fairly interesting auction. It's 26.4% the buyer's premium, so whatever the final hammer price is, you need to pay that on top. Bear in mind this is a UK based auction, so kind of CITES restrictions may apply, import export fees, shipping, all of that kind of fun stuff, so do bear that in mind. If you do enjoy these videos, please consider subscribing, like, comment, turn on notifications, etc., because it really does help. We're just going to blitz through this and see kind of what's going on really. So 155 lots or so, oh no, sorry, 126 lots, so nothing too crazy in terms of numbers. We're just going to see if there's anything interesting. We'll stop and talk about a few things, and other stuff we'll just kind of go through. The link will be in the description as always. So yeah, let's just see what we have here. It's got an early violin bow stick with decorative mother of pearl inlay. Okay, fairly vague there. Estimate 100 to 150 pounds there. Violin bow of the Dodd School, circa 1800. So it's got bids of 500 already on that. Some fairly good photos here. This is nice, early English ivory mounted violin bow. It's kind of like Kramer head. 6 to 800 on that. It's quite a nice looking bow. There's some information there. The tip of the bow is broken. It would have it extend a bit further out. Some cracks and stuff. So interesting looking bow. Needs a bit of TLC. Silver and ivory mounted violin bow unstamped there. 6 to 800 on that as well. A few other things we're just going to skip through, I think. Let's just have a look at a couple while we're here. German silver mounted cello bow stamped Albert Nürnberger. Let's see if there's anything else. It's a bit difficult to kind of see the titles of things. German silver mounted violin bow by and stamped Arnold Voigt. So they're another member of the Voigt family there. In good condition, 700 to 1,000 on that. Just trying to see if there's anything curious here. Looks like we've got a load of hill bows here. Circa 1930. Okay, there's a certificate available if you want it, apparently. Frog looks kind of interesting. There's another violin bow here. Another hill bow there. I do find it a little bit awkward that you can't see what the title is before you click on it, to be honest. Let's have a look at this. English silver mounted cello bow by W.E. Hill and Sons. There's lots of Hill stuff around. Another ivory mounted bow with a Hill stamp there. Another Hill bow there, so no end to the Hill bows there. Some viola bows. Let's have a look at this. the Hill bow there. So let's see what this is. Fine English gold-mounted viola bow by and stamped W.E. Hill. Okay, 7 to 10. That seems fairly high for that, to be honest, because it's not tortoiseshell or fleur-de-lis. The cello bow, Hill and Son. So if you're into Hill and Son stuff, this is probably the auction for you. Looks like all of these are stamped Forster. Okay, interesting. That looks familiar. I wonder if that's is that Boltitude? Yeah, AR Boltitude there. Violin bow. Nice kind of tortoiseshell. And another tortoiseshell Boltitude cello bow there. It's a curious looking bow. By and stamped T Tubbs. 1,000 to 1,500 on that. So lots of English bows there. Another one with the T Tubbs. 2 to 3. Weight 58. Yeah, some curious. Really like the adjusters on that bow. That's really nice. Jazz Tubbs bow here, 4 to 6. Yeah, some interesting stuff. JTL there. Just have a quick look at what this one is. Another one, Jazz Tubbs. He's had quite a good bow collection. Let's have a look at these. French ivory mounted violin bow by and stamped Poisson à Paris. Interesting bow. French silver mounted viola bow by and stamped Daniel Moynal. French golden tortoiseshell mounted violin bow by and stamped Jacques Millant. Okay, interesting. 4 to 6. So there's some pretty good bows here. French silver mounted violin bow by and stamped J. Vorin, 3 to 5. No lot for some reason. Okay, interesting. James Tubbs interest. Handwritten letter from James Tubbs, 1893, discussing repair of a bow. Okay, curious. 2 to 300. Someone's interested in that. Some miniature violins here. It's like fairly nice looking. Another kind of miniature things here. Yeah, it's a nice looking violin as well. So that's kind of curious. Modern reproduction pochette. Looking a little bit interesting case for that. Wow, bit horrid looking, to be quite honest. English violin en bateau by William Robinson. 40-60 on that. Definitely people that collect this stuff. And these Stroval things, which I'm not kind of a massive fan of. Maybe we should start looking through some of this stuff. There's a Roth violin there. I think we can go through a bit here. English violin by and labelled William Old, Falmouth. 100 to 1200 there. English violin by a member of the Ferber family. 2 to 3 on that. We'll just zoom out a tiny bit so we can get that estimate in. Barnabetti, that's like a French kind of imported Violin, yeah, JTL violin. Another French violin there. Marc Lebert. French violin by and labelled H. Emile Blondelet. I think it's up to lot 75, Paul Blanchard. So a lot of hill bows and quite a few French violins so far. Gandon Bernadelle here, 3 to 5. Always popular. Violin sold with a letter from Sotheby's auctioneers, 2005. So violin by and labelled Caressa and Francais. One of these kind of award violins you get sometimes. 12 to 18,000, looks in pretty impressive condition. It's got a Millant certificate as well. Interesting. Paul Jambard, so a lot of French stuff here. Leon Bernadelle there. 18th century French Mirecourt violin, 1800, stamped Le Marquis. A Chapuis, so 18th century French violin, not so exciting that example. German violin, Hornsteiner. Italian violin by and labelled Guida Giovanni, or Giovanni Guida, 10 to 15,000. Okay. 2 small soundpost cracks in the table. Okay, interesting. Italian violin by and labelled Joseph Cerruti. Okay, interesting looking violin, 50 to 80,000 there. It's got a certificate from William E. Hill and Sons, 1959. Curious, quite nice back on that. And nice looking violin. Right, we've got an NF Viome there. 12 to 16,000 on that. And we've got an actual Viome. Well, the main man of the family, Jean Baptiste, 80 to 120,000. That's a really beautiful back there. Yeah, very nice looking violin, that for sure. So 80 to 120,000 there. Has lots of certificates, Hill and Sons. Yeah, interesting. Nice violin. German violin, labelled, viola, labelled Sebastian Klotz. It's quite nice, 8 to 12 on that. Nice lion head. It's got a beer certificate there. English viola, probably by Simon Andrew Forster, 5 to 8 on that. That's also nice. That's actually a very nice looking viola. The length of back on that, 39.1, is fairly small-ish. English viola by William Forster, 8 to 12, 38.3, yeah, quite small. A lot of the English violas around that time were quite small, or small by today's standards. Got a no lot there. Cello here by Roth, 8 to 12 on that. French cello by Joseph Aubry, 8 to 12 on that. John Morrison, circa 1820. Yeah, Morrison stuff is quite interesting. It's actually quite a nice looking cello there, 30 to 50,000 on that. Fine English cello by and labelled William Forster, 50 to 80 on that. This cello is further sold with 2 William Forster copper coins minted by the maker. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it looks in very nice condition. 19th century double perfect violin after Viome. labelled Magini, 1500 to 2000. So I think we're kind of, maybe we're already on to the non-Voigt collection stuff. Can't quite remember, but we've got a few things left to go. French violin, Eugene Langenet. Violin with a certificate saying Jules Grandjean, 1500 to 2500 there. 18th century 7/8 violin, probably Italy. 35.10. It's got a dendrochronology port there from Peter Ratcliffe. That's kind of a quirky looking violin. Quite like that. 3 to 5000. Let's have a look. Okay, so 1720, 1700. Yeah, it's got a load of Italian matches, so yeah, interesting. 18th century violin labelled Joseph Delaglio. Once again, that's a nice looking violin as well. 36.2. Kind of a little bit big. 18th century violin labelled Joseph Klotz. Colomazat, or labelled Colomazat anyway. Interesting early 19th century violin from Italy, 2.5 to 3000 there. Looks like a Peter Ratcliffe document there on the dendrochronology. Yeah, kind of interesting looking. What's Peter saying here? 1799, some kind of a mixture of stuff there, but it is a little bit latey. Don't rule out Italian. Yeah, interesting. Could be from multiple different places with that kind of dendro result. Violin attributed to Richard Duke. Okay, quite like this new picture setup that they have. Early to mid 19th century violin, probably English. Quite like that as well. Pretty cool scroll on that. That's a cool instrument. 1500 to 2000. Yeah, like that. What's the length of back? 35.6. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's nice. 18th century German violin there. That's pretty cool. The violin labelled Vincenzo Cennino, 3 to 5. French violin by Louis Colonneau. Violin with a certificate stating as by Antonius Celestinius. Okay, 3 to 4000 on that. French violin labelled Jenny Bailly. Another German violin with a lion's head there. Interesting back. Czechoslovakian violin by and labelled D.B. Dvorak. Okay, some German stuff there. French violin. Czechoslovakian violin by and labelled Joseph Ruzicka. See estimate on that, 5 to 7. Italian violin by and labelled Remedio Muncha and Cremona, 5 to 7. We saw, I think, is it Bromptons have one of those? Violin labelled Giuseppe Pedrozzini. So a lot of violins around. Late 18th, early 19th century violin stamped Banks. Violin probably French. 18th century violin with Dykes and Sons certificate. What are they saying? Certified determined violin by a label of Joseph Cavalieri of Genoa. Okay, interesting. 3 to 5 on that. Modern English Violin by Glenn A. Collins. Nice back on that. Martin Tauscher. Right, good mid-19th century English violin by Thomas Kennedy. Another really great English maker there. Yeah, nice looking violin. 6,000 to 8,000 on that. French violin, labelled Francois Richard. French violin by and labelled Joseph Hill, 12 to 15, yeah, always popular. Paul Bay there. English viola attributed to a member of the Forster family. And what length of back we got there? 39.4. Okay. Musical viola. English viola of the Bet School, 1810. So length of that, 39.1. Good Austrian viola by and labelled Carl Bach. That's actually very nice. Back as well on that. That's very cool. What's the estimate on that? 6 to 8. Okay. 40.6 length of back. That's getting a bit bigger. Fine French double purfled viola by Jean-Baptiste Vuillaume. Okay, interesting. Got one of these. What's the estimate there? 60 to 80 on that. 39.5. It's got a Rampol certificate there. Probably an acquired taste, that particular viola, but interesting. Portuguese viola by Capella. Nice. I really do like the Capella stuff, actually. It's very nice indeed. 41 centimetres. That's a good size as well. What's the estimate on that? 6 to 8. Okay. French viola there. Viola. French silver-mounted violin bow stamped Husson à Paris. Okay. JTL bow there. Louis Morizon. Auguste Lenoble. Jenny Bay. German silver-mounted bow. We'll just skip through some of these. French silver-mounted violin bow unstamped. Right, Bohemian cello, circa 1920, 2.5 to 4 there. Interesting cello labelled Claude Victor Rambaud, 7 to 10. English cello labelled L.D. Edwards Churchill, something 1860. Interesting looking cello. 1869. French cello by and labelled Maurice Rougier, 10 to 15 on that. 19th century Bavarian cello with carved lion's head, 6 to 8. And then right back to the beginning, so that is it. Yeah, interesting auction this. Some curious stuff from Peter Voigt's collection, and just some interesting stuff in general. Obviously a couple of high tier instruments in there, Vuillaume stuff, some really interesting bows actually, and some other interesting instruments. So definitely a catalogue worth kind of checking out. I always get a bit kind of messed up by how this auction is laid out, just because you can't see the full title. So looks like next time I'll have to view the catalogue like this. I think this is a much better way of doing it actually. Then I can kind of see how it looks a bit better. Okay, well I've learnt that anyway, so for the next time I will view the catalogue like this, because I find it a bit difficult the other way. So interesting auction, definitely worth checking out if you have time. Thanks for watching, really appreciate it, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.